Now it's just a best of 2.
Here we are, where Jupiter is once again going to stay with the tried and true. For Global Esports, going to match them all the same. It's just attempting to maybe find something out the gate there. Early sleep dart to find any out of position members, but both teams brawling at the gate.
Sticking with the 3-3, it has now been successful for both of these teams, so you definitely can't blame them for sticking with it. Both teams are just going to trade blows at this choke point for a while.
We're looking to see which team decides to go in first. It's going to be Global Esports.
Yeah, don't quite get the isolation on Samurai D, actually. Even though it seemed like he was surrounded, so much healing is getting pumped into him, and that's healing that Global Esports weren't actually receiving. It is unsurprising that Jupiter were able to manage that aggression and get all these kills.
And a super risky charge by Sachok as well, trying to pin Samurai D. And if he misses that charge, which he does, he really compromises the rest of his team, who did not really get out the gate just yet. So Jupiter gets a lot of early damage on all the rest of the members who were still behind enemy, or rather, weren't quite into the fight just yet.
And this is where things can start getting really good for Jupiter. Ken Mohororo absolutely delivering on that promise of getting a grab available for the next fight. That means Global Esports, no matter what else they've charged up, they are on the back foot here. Grab just waiting out that. There we go, defense matrix, that is all done and dusted. They get Xeno fly low, they get him out of the mech. They also pick up Azure. It's kind of a bonus in that one. And now it's Global Esports again in full retreat. The question is, how many more will Jupiter get?
And this should be a really punishing defeat for Global Esports as well. Likely going to lose maybe a couple more members as they get back into spawn if they're not too careful.
Oh, wow.
In fact, a couple members is exactly what they lose. And for Jupiter, that just means extra kills, extra ult charge, extra time that Global Esports will end up losing.
Speaking of time, about half of that time just about gone from the clock. Now, this is what Jupiter are really needing to get here on this first defense.
And the snowball's not quite over just yet. Both teams have the Earth Shatters, both teams have the rallies, but it's Jupiter who is just so much closer to everything else.
And again, Ken Mohororo not that far behind. Lil Rax could just beat him out in this next fight.
It lands.
Nice shatter to come out of Samurai D as well. Sachok didn't quite get the same kind of mileage, and Claire already dead as well. Global Esports, not a lot left to work with at this point, just the sound barrier, nearly a grab as the Transcendence comes out from Sabagod.
Graviton Surge should be pretty big. The Global Esports have a respawn advantage here as well. There's that grab.
There is no Transcendence anymore since Sabagod has committed it. Samurai D does go down, self-destruct there. From Xenofly, doesn't get anything. Ken Mohororo may want to re-enter with this grab.
And to be honest, Jupiter, they have to make a decision here. They don't have their main tank, which is a big deal, but the grab still could be a fight turner.
They've chosen to go, and they do commit it, but Amakin's already dead, and they're having a hard time closing out the kills without the extra damage that Samurai D brings. Now they're going to be maybe kicking themselves, wishing they had that grab for the next fight, but what's done is done, and they have to gear up for a point B defense.
And they were only a couple of % off from maybe forcing Xeonflux to use the Transcendence. That's probably the bit that hurts the most, because Jupiter were probably expecting something to be used in response to the Graviton Surge, which ended up not happening because Global Esports just didn't quite have it in the bag, but they do have it for this particular fight, which is going to be the important fight for them, because they can potentially get this double cap in. Jupiter have to be prepared.
Nearly have a Transcendence available from Sabagod. That's going to be very, very critical here. The double support ultimates could be enough to steer Jupiter through this fight, especially with that respawn advantage. Let's see how Global Esports choose to play it, because that's a very early Transcendence from Sabagod. And no kills just yet. It does actually force Xeonflux to use his Transcendence though, and as Ken Mohororo comes up on a grab, and Samurai D actually gets his shatter out just a fraction of a second before Sachok. It is still kills coming through for Global Esports though, and this grab from Ken Mohororo does not get much done. Lil Rax, on the other hand, really getting a big connection on that. Now Jupiter are already into stall mode.
And this is where you just see Sachok there connecting with the Earthshot on the back line. Means no one from Jupiter could really go on top of the graph to secure the damage. It's been a bit of a problem for Jupiter that I've noticed now for maybe 2 maps in a row, specifically on Icon Boulder. They weren't able to get too much damage into the grab. The first grab we saw here on that A defense, again, wasn't super damaging. It's just been time and time again, even if you can charge them up quickly, the actual result of it has not been ideal.
It does feel like they rely a lot on Ken Mohororo having very high charge to get in a lot of their damage. It's often not actually Samurai D getting the damage, and you'll see that counterpointed against this grab that came out. So this is Ken Mohororo's on the far side. And look, there's
only 2 members committing damage in the grab.
Exactly, because all the rest are on the other side of the fight. You've got Samurai D trying to get an Earth Shatter in. You've got Ryu, who was expecting the grab to go in front of him. He was in the complete wrong position to potentially stop that. And I mean, this is all just the big mess on the side of Jupiter. Now you get to see Lil Rax commit his grab far more effective. A lot more people immediately piling in to get the damage in.
And the main person that kind of needs to be in there has to be your main tank. Your Ryan swinging the hammer, getting all the cleave AoE damage in there, charging up his own Earth Shatter as well. And Satchok, despite some awkward charge movements that he did early on this map, has kind of been able to commit his shatters in a way where even when Jupiter want to make their play, the shatter completely nullifies what Jupiter are trying to do.
And I think Satchok has got a lot more value out of his shatters when he has used them in that manner, when he has used them to prevent Jupiter from playmaking after they've already committed tools. It's been very effective, more so than when they're trying to use it aggressively. And on the other side, Jupiter have only tried to use theirs aggressively and so far unsuccessfully.
The other thing we've seen now 2 maps in a row is that Jupiter's defense has been a little bit shaky. A, not super ideal. B, was a bit of a non-affair. Now on Jupiter's own attack, this has to go super well because it's a monstrous time bank for Global Esports.
That's the thing. They want to get one of those nice and quick double caps if they can, so help it. And it has to begin with a quick cap on A.
See Samurai D here, lots of early damage, 43%. All healed back up though, and Xeonflux is going to get those healing points, which is why he's also here.
Stun on Kenma Hororo, but they're able to finish off Little Rax and that Bubble Kitty as well. So Global Esports, a rare situation where they get the crowd control in, but actually aren't able to finish off the kill. And now Satchok, very low, gets isolated off to the side. This is pretty nice for Jupiter. They get to just split the team into 2 and ideally pick them apart bit by bit.
And they need to pick up some of these kills here. Satchok likely to go down. No Earth Shadow to be seen. Can't really use it. But Jupiter, like you mentioned, really ideal scenario here. They're going to get a bunch of kills. They're going to get this early cap. It's going to be a 1 attempt as well. The bad news is because Global Esports have had a little bit of time to charge up their own ultimates, it's not going to be a very easy double cap for Jupiter. They're going to walk onto B, but there will be resistance.
Still a lot of time in the bank here for Jupiter. Global Esports had about a minute when they capped out A. Jupiter had about 2.5. Then you add in this extra time. If they get an early good fight here, which they could still do, even if they don't, they could get one in the next fight. Could easily match that time bank.
The fear that I do have, though, is if Jupiter actually do lose this fight, the momentum swings in Global Esports' favor and they get a big bunch of ultimates. But right now, this is a very critical engagement.
Quick commit onto the point. Both Reinhardt squaring up. That's the first shatter out. Samurai D!
Wow.
Oh, flanked around the side. That's absolutely disgusting. Wasn't caught in any of that crowd control. Had barely taken a lick of damage. And look at that, Jupiter barely even got a chance to commit the ultimates that charged up.
You can see that it's all for nothing for this defense as well. They knew they were going to be behind. They knew the only way they were maybe going to win this is to get super aggressive, make sure they can find some plays to the caught out of position, find the appropriate flanks, nullify the appropriate ultimates, and one of those was Samurai D with the Earth Shatter. Take that off the board by removing a member, and then Jupiter do not have that member to rally around, do not have the big ultimates to play with or the members to sustain.
Luckily for Jupiter, Xeonflux also committed his Transcendence, so the momentum swing isn't too great here. They more or less come into this fight even to Global Esports.
Even is still a little bit awkward. Ryu being bumped off the edge as well is not ideal, but good shatter.
Yeah, decent to charge in on Little Rax as well, but that leaves Samurai D isolated in a grab. Double self-destruct layered up, and neither gets anything for it. That's a bad start for Jupiter, unfortunate as it is to say, but they see that very quickly backing off.
And this is again where Jupiter, they land really good ultimates objectively, but just don't have the follow-up. A huge bump by Azure, that boot off the side for Ryu means has to wait to come back in, uses the self-destruct, doesn't get anything done with it, and suddenly both teams are starting to really get down at ultimates, but it's a time factor and it's a progress factor that really affects Jupiter. Not a single tick and a couple extra minutes down.
Incredibly, though, that momentum swing still has not come to pass. They actually come in again with a bit of an ultimate advantage. Double Transcendence committed. This maybe favors Jupiter, but given that Kenma Hororo has that grab, they're going to look to commit pretty soon.
Here it comes right now. There's not really much of a response. Sound barrier by Jupiter as well.
And finally, we see Jupiter getting the follow-up. The shatter maybe not quite so necessary. Certainly didn't get any connection, but the damage is starting to mount. In Global Esports, if they lose these tanks, they're in a real world of trouble. There they go down now. It's just going to be Little Rax with the backing of 3 supports.
We have to see now if Global Esports can really slow this one down. It's somewhat unlikely they can complete this hold, but they do have the abilities to make this slow.
And this could actually be a pretty close time when you look at how many kills are coming through. It's going to be Jupiter just below at best, but it's looking very close to completed here as they finish off Bubble Kitty and Satchok for another time. And now Xenofly going to die and also be forced off the point as he was D-Mech. Nice stun as Lil Rex recommits, and this should be the last few ticks of percentage. Xeon Flux is going to give it one last hurrah, but that will be indeed the last hurrah as the cap comes through.
Yeah, Lil Rex is no one as well. Not going to get a lot done on that Doomfist. And for Global Esports, you do got to say, despite a bit of a kind of poor position to start with on that B defense, considering how much momentum Jupiter came in with, they still won 2 defensive fights on B. They still forced roughly 2 resets there for Jupiter, and they still managed to cut down the time so much that Global Esports actually have a slight advantage in the time bank. Jupiter, you'd expect, for how far ahead they actually were most of the time, to have won maybe the cap a lot earlier than they actually did, which is a little bit of a shame for them.
That's the thing. You also do have to look at the other side of that, which is that Global Esports never quite got that momentum shift that they were hoping for. So credit to Jupiter as well to actually come through 2 losing fights and still run relatively even, such that they could still get a successful fight later on down the line. A lot of teams would not have pulled that off. So now into the time bank, still relatively even and still anyone's game.
And I'm really looking at Azure here to be a big playmaker, because if you notice on that B defense, he was getting a lot of very important boops, a lot of very important environmentals to force members from Jupiter on the high ground onto the low ground where they could not be really effective. One of those members, I believe, was actually Sabagod mid-Transcendence, so that Transcendence was just completely nullified. Looking now on this defense, Global Esports are still in an advantageous space. A wasn't their best shot at defending last time. That needs to be addressed now.
The thing is, Zura's been absolutely phenomenal with that displacement so far on the Lucio. So Jupiter, slightly lower time does mean they are once again finding themselves on the attack.
We're going to see if Samurai D can find something. Find a quick death.
Yeah, that's not the kind of treasure you're hunting for there.
It's just a bit of a slowdown. Global Esports are not going to press too far either. Maybe could have forced the 6v5 there and pressed some extra damage, but not going to be the case. It just means 45 seconds gone for Jupiter on the clock. Samurai D back into action now, and Global Esports not really ahead in ultimates just yet.
That's the thing, neither team has quite picked up much of a lead here, and that does still mean that this next skirmish could fall either way. It depends on what frags come out or what ultimates get charged first. Yikes, that's a big chunk. Ryu gets stunned though as they make the rotation.
It's just a big stop button there as well for Global Esports, just making sure that they don't go in, that there's enough damage on Satchok to prevent that interception from Global Esports against the rotation. And Jupiter just looking to go the long way around the map. Very different in terms of style to what Global Esports have been doing, which is Global Esports want to fight early, Jupiter want to rotate early.
If this fails though, it's a lot of time wasted on the clock in what is a limited time situation. So now finally making the move onto the point itself. Still not quite ahead in terms of ultimates.
Looking at Satchok here, does have an Earth Shadow available. Where's he going to put it?
Samurai D is super low. It does connect onto some backliners, and Samurai D does not quite move back far enough to put in counter damage. If he drops the shield to try and damage, he was going to die. That is unfortunately how it played out. Global Esports getting a fight win there, like I said, wastes a lot of Jupiter's time.
You do have to look at the risk-reward factor here for Satchok as well. Note again, he took a lot of early damage when Jupiter were making the rotation. But what he also managed to do is deal a decent amount of damage, which is why when push comes to shove and the fight does break out, he gets the first shadow of the game. Samurai D still mid-charge right now, and for Global Esports, they're in position. They have Lil Rex's grab as well.
Now here's a similar move to what we saw the first time around from Jupiter. It's going to be a Transcendence laid in. Self-destruct up from Xenofly, still finds Claire and Ryu's mech. So Global Esports off to a good start. Jupiter see the writing on the wall and try and pull back. So this is where Global Esports can cut them down and charge up some more ultimates again.
And this is the kind of defense Global Esports were looking for on the original defensive phase. However, back then they lost 2 members while Jupiter were rotating. Global Esports playing much more safer this time around, making sure they're not losing members. Satchok being disciplined as well, making sure that despite taking damage, he's not going to get taken down. And Global Esports have been continually keeping this point alive. Not a single tick yet, and we're down to the last minute.
This is realistically where it needs to be a one and done now for Jupiter on this push. And when I say one and done, I mean they need to cap this, and then with the extra 30 seconds, cap B, if they want to have a real fighting chance in their own defense.
They have the right ultimates to do that with, but they're probably going to have to spend a decent amount just on A, which is going to affect their ability to take B later.
considered doing a fake out on the rotation, but Global Esports weren't too baited in. This is, again, a slow rotation from Jupiter, who are working with very limited time.
And this is going to mean that this is going to be their final attempt. No more resets available, realistically, for Jupiter. Has to find the grab now, if possible. Really looking at maybe Xenofly to eat this one out.
Just kind of throws it out into the middle of the team. This time, Satchok's counter Shatter does not get what it needs, and he ends up getting picked off. Shatter now out from Samurai D. Not too hot, but it's enough to get Claire on his back. Doesn't quite get him finished off though. Sorry, that's Azure on his back rather. Now the grab coming out in response from Little Rags. Jupiter haven't got the quick kills they needed, so now this is becoming a slog, and it is a time-expensive slog.
And even if Global Esports actually lose here, they walk away having gotten most of the ultimates out of Jupiter. Jupiter still have to spend, probably have to invest the Earthshatter if things don't go well.
That being said, it is now starting to go well as that Earthshatter comes up available. Samurai D knows that if they want to have a fighting chance of capping B, he should hold on to it. So if he can, he will. Ken Mahororo has also, once again, prolifically charged up another grab.
Right, very important now for Jupiter. How they transition into B is going to be incredibly important. 5 ultimates nearly for them, 6 if they can get Sabagot up there as well. Global Esports are actually in a reasonably compromised situation here. A couple of change-ups, Bubble Kitty going to go onto the Ana here. A good Bionade Aura Sleep can really turn the tide.
This is where it really comes down to crunch time for Jupiter. They've got a lot to work with. Last time they were in this position, though, they still didn't quite get it over the line. They need a hot start in this fight. Grab out. Where's that follow-up? Transcendence is down. Self-destruct laid up. Finds nothing. Global Esports, low as they are, have weathered the worst of it. Arguably, their own self-destruct doesn't get much. Samurai D's Earthshatter goes wide. Sleep, but straight back up. This is getting very dicey now for Jupiter.
And we're having to see some members come through here. Jupiter needs to find some kills. Global Esports now get to use their own grab.
Oh, and that Transcendence not in time to save Claire. This is now a numbers deficit for Jupiter. They have yet to find a counter kill, but they get it on Satchok. That is a very high priority target. Samurai D able to stay alive as well, just barely as they demeg Xenofly. So finally, Jupiter start to pull ahead. They lose Samurai D. That is a little bit dangerous if they can keep Ken Mahororo alive. He's got a lot of charge, got a lot of damage. Ryu's dead though, out of the mech. Little Rags with a nano boost is doing so much damage, but taking big chunks too. The respawn advantage starts to mount though, and with not even a third capped out, Jupiter are starting to get beaten back piece by piece. Global Esports poised to complete the hold.
And this is the loss that really hurts Jupiter as well. They were in such a good position. 5 ultimates to about 2 or 3 on the side of Global Esports, who make that last minute change. You had Satchok, who was on the Hammond, trying to really stall up A, changing freshly back onto Ryan, 0% ultimate. And you also have the Ana coming out as well for the side of Global Esports, just trying to change things up a little bit, making sure they can make that Sleep Dart play or the Bionade play. And you see, once again, unfortunately, the first grab coming up from Jupiter doesn't have the damage follow-up.
That's the thing. Ken Mahororo, as much as we have complimented his ability to charge these grabs, to land these grabs, and arguably this has nothing to do with him, unfortunately, the follow-up on those grabs, the conversion of kills, has been very lacking for this team so far.
Especially considering they had, again, everything going for them. They have the self-destruct as well to layer in.
So many ultimates.
Global Esports were really in a struggling space. And, a decent Bionade land on Amakin helps. Decent Sleep Dart land on Ryu, it helps. Even though Ryu was ultimately woken back up pretty much straight away. You see here, Lil Rex, as soon as he used the Graviton Surge on the Global Esports side, a lot more results.
And that's the thing, it's just that tidier commitment to getting the kills that is doing so much work. And even when it really started to mount, even as these kills came through, the right targets were dying on the side of Jupiter for Global Esports to turn it back around. I would argue that begins with Claire. You lose that extra healing. It's hard to have the sustain to keep going on that point B.
And also the Nano Boost definitely helps when you got a 100 energy Zarya on your
Oh
team.
boy, it does.
And Global Esports now, 4 hot minutes to get through. If they get A, they put themselves in a draw scenario.
And that's the thing, best case scenario, assuming their cap is a draw. So Jupiter, they really have their work cut out for them here.
Right now we have to see Global Esports usually like to take the fight early here. They don't want to rotate.
That's really tough now. Ryu takes big chunks. Is going to lose that mech. That is not how they wanted to start here. Samurai D-Lo as well. And this is already Global Esports off to an incredibly fast start here again. We see the difference in the teams. Jupiter, slow pushes, slow rotations, a lot of time lost. Global Esports, one push right down the middle, quick, fast, and clean with plenty of time on the clock.
And it's just the complete opposite of what Jupiter had on their attack as well, which ended up going to the overtime for A. this is a one and done, and we're already basically on to be one
Guaranteed
member is
draw.
capping, while Global Esports continue the rest of the push.
One thing is, though, it was so fast that Global Esports haven't actually finished charging up ultimates, which gives Jupiter some leeway. It gives them some time to finish charging the ultimates that they have begun.
This is where the first ultimate of the game is going to be very important, and I say that because so far no one actually does have an ultimate. Bubble Kitty is probably the closest here, along with the two Zenyattes, and once those happen, you're going to start rushing in with the Transcendence.
Zeon Flux actually has his first, but takes a big chunk of damage, and now Sabagod has his as well.
Rex low.
Yeah, this is some good opening poke from Jupiter, but it's still Ryu who is the first to lose the mech, and without that potentially to stop the grab, it comes right on in out of Little Rax. They immediately get kills. Ken Mahororo needs the grab of his life. He does get it down, stops some follow-up on that Earth Shatter, but the self-destruct still finds Ken Mahororo, and Samurai D's own Earth Shatter did not get anywhere near the follow-up that Jupiter needed. Again, the follow-up just lacking from this team right now, and only a third needed to be gained from Global Esports. They are looking poised to get it in the bag, and that would put them up to match point.
And not a single member down for Global Esports as well. Desperation sound barrier here from Claire catches 3, and Jupiter just trying. They're finally getting one member. They're finally slowing down.
Satchok, that was big. Getting Satchok as well. This is Jupiter having to cede some space. We're not out of the woods just yet, folks, as Little Rax gets picked off. These are good counter trades in Global Esports' favor, don't get me wrong, but Jupiter have got just enough on the right targets. They've given themselves a second fighting chance.
And one of those right targets was actually Little Rax, who had a Graviton Surge. Because he goes down, one of the big tools for Global Esports to continue pushing, unfortunately just ends for them. They don't get a single tick here, and that's very important because, first of all, that means they don't win, but also, usually when you're that far ahead in a fight, you're expected to get a couple ticks in. Jupiter just do not let go of the point.
Don't have a lot to work with, though. It's really just that Transcendence. They need Ken Mahororo to get a grab available soon, and no doubt he will, but it's got to be a good one. We haven't seen a good one for a while.
It's now 4 to 5 really hot ultimates for Global Esports, soon to be the rally as well. Jupiter still in a really kind of tricky spot here.
There's the Transcendence, double self-destruct layered up to 1-for-1. Ryu gets Zeon Flux. That could be very high impact without that Transcendence on the table. Ken Mahororo's down. They need to get some counter kills. Samurai D, he gets one in on Azure with a charge, and that might just give them legs, but this point is nearly capped. They don't have time to wait for respawns. Amakin coming in with a rally. Ryu trying to hold down the point for a moment. Ken Mahororo trying to flood on in, nearly has a grab, but not quite there, and actually needs to touch the point as well. They're trying to do what they can. Ryu will not remech. They're finally coming back out of the base, and they do have a good number of members to bear, but they need to get kills. By now, Zeon Flux has rejoined the team, and he's very quick on the Transcendence. Ken Mahororo's grab gets eaten. The Earth Shatter comes to Nouse. Sabagod trying to rescue this as members are still dropping around him. Global Esports have shown how to sustain on a point B fight, and again, their Graviton Surge with so much more impact. The gong will ring out in triumph as Global Esports will take us to match point.
And this is where they just say, you do not get to fool me twice here. First push probably should have been ours, wasn't quite there. Jupiter held on to the defense second time around, not going to be the case. Global Esports once again walking with the ultimate advantage. They get to commit in there. Wasn't a super clean fight for them. Jupiter had a lot of fight back. They were swinging punches back towards Global Esports, but not quite good enough the second time compared to the first, and that's going to give us a 2-1 lead now for Global Esports in the series.
It does feel like a number of situations, Jupiter have been in a situation where they need to just barely hold on. And I'm starting to get a little bit worried about this team. A team that had a very hot start, a team that was getting more out of their ultimates in a few situations than what Global Esports were. That seems to have completely swapped over now. In fact, Jupiter are getting very little out of a lot of their ultimates, whereas Global Esports are consistently getting a lot.
And this is where we have to look at the previous maps as well. Lee Jung-Tao, which went very 50-50. Eichenwalde, which was more so in the favor of Global Esports, but you felt like Jupiter still had a leg in the race. This time around at Hanamura, you're starting to feel like Jupiter have very much slowed down compared to the two previous maps, and Global Esports have maintained pace. In fact, Global Esports might have even sped up their pace.
And like I said, when you consider that Jupiter are only getting less and less out of their tools in these fights, they seem to be slowing down their pace, if anything, and that's quite alarming. They don't have, you know, a 10-15 minute break this time around to go away and really address and reassess. In fact, we actually just go straight into the next map, which is, for what it's worth, going to be Escort. And if you want to know how that works, take a look at this.
Welcome to Watchpoint Gibraltar. This is Escort. Two teams face off as either defenders or attackers. This is the payload. The attacking team has a limited amount of time to escort the payload along a set path containing 3 checkpoints. The payload only moves forward when an attacker stands near it. Defenders can delay the payload's movement by standing nearby at the same time. To get moving again, attackers must clear away the defenders by force. Every time the payload reaches a checkpoint, the attackers score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. If even one attacker is near the payload when the clock runs out, the game enters overtime. This extends play indefinitely until the attackers are either cleared off the payload or they gain more time by reaching a checkpoint. The round ends when the payload reaches the destination or when time runs out. Teams switch sides each round. Whichever team scores the most points and escorts the payload farthest wins.
And here on Escort, on Rialto, still so much to play for on both sides. Jupiter still have an opportunity here to maybe turn things around, take us to map 5, and for Global Esports, it's time to do what they could not do against Nova MS. Close out the series when you are ahead at match point.
And that's the funny thing I would like to note about both of these teams, actually. Jupiter themselves have even found themselves in a position many a time where they have a bit of a lead in a series, often a 2-0-1, and then struggle to close it out, and then they don't close it out until the very 5th map, which they do, and that was good enough to get them to a final once upon a time, but it's funny that that's a bit of a trend for both of these teams, because inevitably, that trend is going to be broken for one of these two teams tonight.
And what you are seeing in terms of trend, at least for this particular match, is Global Esports, they did lose that opening map of the evening, and you kind of felt like, again, that could have gone either way, right? But towards the end of the series, it starts to feel like they're powering up, which is a little bit different compared to last week, where you felt like they were powering down, and eventually you get to map 5, and Nova MS are just in position to win. Right now, Global Esports should be in position to finish.
That puts the pressure on to Jupiter. Jupiter, who were just yesterday tied for first. They will not be able to tie in terms of map differential anymore, but if they walk away with the win, and they do still have that one going for them, they are on the back foot, more so than they have been so far this tournament.
And it's a map like Rialto where I'm really interested to see if either team really wants to flex out versatility. For a team like Jupiter, 4 out of 4 maps now going to stick strictly to the 3-3 coach composition. And for Global Esports, we've already seen their capability to maybe flex onto something else. They've had Fires, they've had Ashes, and this would be the map where you could bring that out again if you wanted to.
I mean, even flexing onto the Ana, as much as they're not committing to it, it is still a flex in terms of these straight 3-3 mirror matchups. So they even have that just as a sub option available to them.
A very early brawl as well. Jupiter holding super close, not where you see most defenses. Usually you're around the corner here, and so far it's paying off.
It's risky though, and now you can see where that risk starts to bite them as Ryu gets demaxed, and it gives Jupiter an opportunity, or rather Global Esports an opportunity to push forward onto Jupiter. You see that in Claire going down, and with the closer respawn for Global Esports, this could start to bite Jupiter a bit too much.
And I think Jupiter need to start thinking about going back there, and the charge backwards signals the retreat as Global Esports now might look to chase.
Critically though, they got that kill on Satchok, and the casualties on Jupiter were Ryu's mech, which he has now got back, and Claire, who can get back relatively quickly. So this is still not too bad, but Global Esports have momentum on their side. Self-destruct forward gets nothing, and Jupiter are just having to give a lot of space here. Oh, Ryu demeched again.
Yeah, he just got the mech back too, and looking at Jupiter now, Earthshadow's coming up online. Kemo Hororo's nearly onto the grab, but so is Lil Rax, Satchok not too far away himself.
This entire courtyard has been kind of a non-fight because of Jupiter's decision earlier. They've just been in recovery mode, and not really since then. This is going to be Global Esports getting a cap with Jupiter committing an Earthshatter and not really anything else. This is an absolute disaster right now. Samurai D gives him the slip, but he's still going to have to take a bit of a swim in the drink there. And Jupiter's decision to hold far forward has really cost them.
And I call that a slip and dip from Samurai D, as Jupiter now just have to lick their wounds as they head towards that B defense. This next corner is going to be very important for them. They wanted to hold super early onto A, did kind of cost them, but onto B is where they need to really slow down the push, because there's still a lot of time on the board, and Global Esports have very forward positioning as well.
I mean, Jupiter should have the ultimates to do it. As much as it's relatively even, they have a slight lead, and they have the right ultimates as well, but in the past, when we've said that this series, that hasn't actually amounted to much.
You can see the pressure here. Satchok specifically just trying to take high ground away, pushing members off even. This is really preventing Jupiter from establishing the control of this particular part of the map that they want.
And the payloads continue to move.
I don't know about that Shadow.
That's a bit of a whiff, Shadow. I think Satchok was expecting them to move down a bit earlier than they did. But Jupiter is still taking their time moving down. This is going to get risky. If Global Esports can keep putting pressure on the cart, eventually Jupiter are going to have to come down and fight.
And I think the cart has already moved past where Jupiter really want to defend. This is already a little bit of an awkward space for them. They still haven't really committed anything just yet. Graviton Surge being held above Global Esports' heads and themselves as well, looking from beneath, looking for opportunities to use their own grab. And now a bit of a rotation. They want to maybe force something on the high ground.
Global Esports did have to give a bit of space there, like rightfully so. Ooh, this is dicey. Jupiter nearly at the full Christmas tree here. All 6 ultimates. Grav is going to be the first one committed. But again, the follow-up is just not really there. It's only a charge from Samurai D. Now the self-destruct grab combo on the other side of that going to be a lot more successful. That's how you get it done. Samurai D's shatter here is really just too little too late. And I just don't get it. They threw a grab, they got 3 members, and they just stood in front of them with shields up.
To be honest, they actually had the self-destruct there in as well. It's a little bit of a weird place because you can put the grab there, but your members are kind of single file on this narrow staircase, so maybe not the ideal place. The opposite, though, is unfortunately very much true for Jupiter, where they got grab, but the self-destruct connects. Xenofly picks up 3. That was well set up by Global Esports, who now push on to C.
Jupiter look like they've just completely lost their mojo here. Global Esports, they're getting a lot out of these ultimates. Jupiter are getting less and less and less and really starting to struggle. Now Anakin on his back is going to stay alive for a little bit longer, but he's still isolated. He's still eventually going to get picked off, and Jupiter are still just reeling. It feels like they've never really found their footing on Rialto here.
They are getting a couple of counter trades here. Just one on Xenofly so far, but they are still being routed. 100 energy charged by Lil Rex. Graviton Surge being charged up there as well. Jupiter now back to spawn.
And that's the thing. They're in spawn now. They only killed Xenofly. That's the only thing they got in that last bit. And that was with the cart moving the whole time. Now Jupiter is suddenly finding themselves in their last fight.
A couple of ultimates available. In fact, 3 for Global Esports. None quite yet for Jupiter. And that's the problematic part because they need something to work with. Global Esports is sensing, though, that those ultimates are going to come online soon and are giving a bit of space.
They feel confident here that they can just use their own ultimates, get that mileage out of them, and absorb whatever Jupiter throw at them. So Jupiter, this is only a momentary respite.
Very important, though, because it does give them the time to get those necessary ults. Samurai D, another opportunity to maybe get a good shatter in. It's been his battle versus Satchok that's going to be quite important because Satchok doesn't have a shatter. Samurai D has all the opportunity.
Kid Mahoro has been able to charge another grab as well. So we're seeing those both available for both teams. That's going to be Lil Rex committing his first. Actually, both committing at the same time. Self-destruct layered in from Ryu. Doesn't find much. Xenofly chose not to commit his. The shatter did come out from Samurai D to really no effect. And now all the ultimates so far largely ineffectual. Satchok about to come up on a shatter though. The Samurai D goes down. They even find Anakin. Ken Mahororo trades one back, but it's only one. Now he goes down and Satchok is still holding on to an Earth Shatter. A shatter that they might not even need. He uses it on Sabagon alone to ensure that they can finish off that kill, ensure that there is no one left to stagger the cart, and ensure that they get the cap with a lot of time to spare.
And to be honest with you, when you look at Global Esports here as well, when they look back on that particular fight, once they realize that actually Jupiter didn't have any ults earlier, they could have gone a little bit earlier in terms of the fight and would have taken it probably a lot smoother. Jupiter got a lot of extra room to get those extra ultimates up and still really couldn't win with it, but they did need to make the time to have that happen. 2 minutes 12 on the time back for Global Esports. Very respectable considering Rialto is a very difficult map to camp, but a lot of A was not really much of a defense.
Yeah.
Most of B was a bit of a whiff defense as well. Had a decent amount of slowdown across this kind of corner with the staircase. But at the end of the day, Jupiter was just kind of here or there on the defense. No real big resets on that attack.
That's the thing. It looked like they never really quite wanted to commit to a defense, except for that very first one, which was maybe a bit of a mistake. Most of the ground that was gained was just Jupiter you know, continuing to bleed from unstitched wounds and ceding a lot of free ground.
And I think, you know, to be honest, they did go for fights. They did want to set up a defense and all of that, but they just couldn't quite get the value. They couldn't quite win anything.
Yeah.
Again, they never forced full resets against the attack because Global Esports never had to fully return to spawn, put themselves in a spot where it's a completely neutral space for both teams to walk into. That would have favored Jupiter, especially on to B, but that just never happened for Jupiter.
Like you said, never got those fights. Like Bono still hadn't found what they were looking for. Now on the attack, they're going to have to really change that tune. Maybe become Snow Patrol, a different Irish successful band.
Global now, Global Esports on this defense, Jupiter on their offense as well. Needs to get a lot done. Needs to force this time back to happen, and Jupiter have been kind of struggling on this offense, or rather on offenses so far in the series.
This is just pretty predictable. It's where you get the entrance into this courtyard that the pressure starts to mount. This is going to be where Jupiter have to start fighting.
And this is usually where teams do force fights as well. On that particular corner, as we bend into the actual courtyard, Jupiter now going to the high ground, forcing Global Esports on the low ground first, and then likely both teams will brawl it out in the courtyard.
Eventually something's got to give. Jupiter just taking their time. Here's the move up from Xenofly. Let's get Ken Mohororo on the ground, but it's not too bad. They pull back to the cart. Satchok isolated. That is a great pick. Traded, though, evenly. As with a slightly closer respawn for Jupiter, though, that could be all the difference needed here. Xenofly low, but not quite out of the mech just yet.
And that's a very important save for Global Esports. If they lose the mech on Xenofly, that's a 2-for-1 in favor of Jupiter. Feeling the pressure now, Transcendence being used.
Yeah, very early Transcendence, and Sabagod is just barely able to match, but not able to save Ryu.
Sabagod hasn't used.
Yeah, he chose not to. That's a little bit rough, and it's maybe a decision that's going to cost them here. As those Reinhardts come back into play, Jupiter find themselves actually at a disadvantage. Trying to get a wrap around onto Satchok, all caught up in a grab, and here's where that Transcendence comes out from Sabagod.
Collecting 2 on the self-destruct as well. Third one will go down for Samurai D. This is all over for this push for Jupiter, and they were in position to do a lot more. Their own grab was coming up online. Sabagod eventually does use the Transcendence, but when you have a team like Global Esports that can set up grabs, self-destruct combos so consistently, you see so many times Xenofly can get these multi-kills and self-destructs. It's not a mistake, it's not a coincidence, it's just how Global Esports can play.
And you gotta say, there was opportunities there for Jupiter to choose to use their ultimates differently, to maybe find different advantages. Now they are back on the payload, but they're still in the same position trying to fight their way into the open part of the courtyard.
And this time on 2 fronts as well. Part of Global Esports is on the high ground, so if a grab comes through, you're not going to get everyone.
That's the Shatter first, and unfortunately Samurai D's own Shatter not really getting a whole lot. Self-destruct layered in though from Ryu, and that's the sort of placement you really need. That's how you can combo it up with a grab. Satchok gets a kill though, and is rescued by a sound barrier from Azure, but that's all they've really got left to go on here. The rally available and running, and Lil Rack's nearly on a grab, but Jupiter have the tools to answer it.
Jupiter need to really get into that respawn advantage. That's really all they can rely on. Ult's coming online for Samurai D. If he can maybe find something as well that could be big.
Shatter from Satchok. Not too hot this time. Oh, but critically they kill Sabagod. Ken Mohororo comes in hot though, answers a few back, so they're not out of the woods just yet here, Global Esports. The grab from Lil Rax. They don't quite get that big self-destruct combo that they needed. And finally, Jupiter look like they have regained some of that mojo.
Kind of in the 11th hour here as well. Just about 1 minute left to go on the clock. Jupiter with a closer respawns, get their reinforcements back just that much faster. Global Esports now likely have to give up A. They're not too careful. They do look like maybe they want to commit here.
This is their last chance to get a fight, and you certainly wouldn't blame them. They could just run out the clock here. Jupiter really, really need to win this if they want to stay in with a chance.
And it's going to come in from both teams at this rate. Satchok looking at him again, really close to Earthshatter. So is Samurai D.
Samurai D's just that little bit behind though. Satchok runs around the side. Huge one. Not quite followed up on though. Didn't want to charge it around the side. Would be too vulnerable. Samurai D's own Shatter not too effective. Xenofly absolutely drilled down out of the mech, and a grab catches half of Global Esports, with the other half unable to come to their rescue. Finally, Jupiter getting something else out of these ultimates. It's not just going to be a flash in the pan. They're looking like they've regained some of that consistency.
Oh boy, Global Esports, where do I even start with that one? The most anticlimactic Earthshatter I've ever seen. Satchok throws it in, catches everyone, then decides not to go in.
Spray and walk away.
I'm pretty sure you can just charge in there. It's not really that risky. You had most of Jupiter, all of Jupiter on their backs. That would have been a kill. That should have been Global Esports charging forward. We talk about Kemo Hororo using grabs and Jupiter not being able to contest it, but Global Esports, what was that?
Not pretty is what it was, and a little bit unfortunate, but doesn't mean that things are all peachy and rosy for Jupiter just yet. Still a long way to go if they want to be taking us into a time bank. They do have the ultimates to keep momentum going, though.
And the setup here is really important. Early grab could catch up members.
Yeah, and that counter shatter from Samurai D really lackluster. By the time you've walked into that trap, there is very little that a counter shatter is going to do for you.
And I think the shatter coming through as well, if it just comes out maybe half a second earlier, catches Lil Rax before he gets the grab out, that could have been a very good play. Jupiter would have gotten a lot of damage or a team wipe there, but because half the members are trying to force high ground control, half the members are still kind of pushing the cart, Global Esports find the opportunity to catch that top half out, clean them up, and force Jupiter to back off.
I like the positioning there from Global Esports. They're going, look, you're going to have to muscle your way back to that cart before you can even get that fight that you want. Now Jupiter making the same approach as last time.
A little different though, they're bringing the whole team this time around. Last time they just knocked on the door. This time they just want to kick it open, have the grab to do so. Global Esports have the defense to do so, but it's less than 1 minute to go, and Jupiter need to be the ones to pull the trigger.
Taking their time here, a little bit hesitant. Now moving forward, coming down into the low ground so that they can regain possession of that cart.
Still haven't got the fight though, it's a long range grab. Oh,
yeah, it's going to be a tough one to follow up on. This is the same kind of issue they've been having all night long. They do force the self-destruct from Xenofly. He does get back in that mech. It's now Jupiter with an ultimate advantage.
Jupiter still need to get a few more kills here. This high ground still in control, Global Esports. As long as that's happening, look at Lil Rax's damage. Look at his ultimate charge. He's unopposed here, and Jupiter's still backing out. They just haven't really made the distance. They haven't really made the ground.
It's the thing, they've not actually gained anything from all of that. And now 15 seconds to go. This is actually just their last fight. They don't have a second chance after this.
Same rotation as all onto the high ground, looking for something. They've at least forced Global Esports down now, but look, Graviton Surge available. Lil Rax ready to pop.
That's the thing, this is ground that Global Esports are willing to give because they know they've got tools coming up available. Nice shatter though, but they, again, don't get a quick follow-up. Now, sound barrier there from Azure. They got Xenofly's mech, but that's all they got. Grab to come out from Ken Mohororo. How does he get them so fast?
And this one's
Lil Rax held on to his and never actually committed it. Jupiter are miraculously going to get possession of the cart back.
And he was looking at Ryu the whole time thinking, when is this defense matrix going to be off? Please use it so we can get a grab opportunity. While he's waiting for that, Jupiter says, no, we're just going to use our own Graviton Surge here. Kemo Hororo throws it out there. Jupiter in perfect position. Samurai D's on the front line swinging. He's nearly built up another Earth Shatter, and finally, we are on the scene.
There's the grab from Lil Rax.
It's like a
only gets Ken Mohororo. He does die, but there's still movement happening on the cart while that happened, and there's still a minute on the clock, so that's actually not too costly for Jupiter. It's almost one of the better ways to have a grab get thrown at you.
I mean, if you're going to absorb a grab, the best case scenario is you either eat the grab with the Matrix or it just misses. The next best is it only catches one member. That's exactly what happens. Problem now is Global Esports, close hold on the stairs. Jupiter have to get around it somehow. Global Esports are also concerned because they see the long rotation with Jupiter and they don't want to get backcapped.
They have to take a very quick retreat here. They don't lose anyone as they do so, so that's one thing pulled off there for Global Esports. Jupiter still on the hunt.
Good discipline by Global Esports. Less discipline by Satchok though. Super far forward. Has to be careful.
Yeah, really in the thick of it. Shatter gets thrown down. Self-destruct is there. Player's going to survive that one. Samurai D's own Earth Shatter, unfortunately, not getting too much, but now these grabs are going to start coming into play with no Transcendences to cover them.
And look at this. Lil Rax slightly ahead, but needs to be able to pull the trigger. Last time, just a little bit too slow. Global Esports. Lil Rax is super low, though. Has to be careful with health.
Ken Mohororo has just barely overtaken him as well, so if he's fast to pull the trigger here, then they could still get this done. Lil Rax as well, too low to realistically pull the trigger. This is a lot of extra push on the cart now.
Just need to see these grabs come through. Kemo Hororo is still holding on as well.
Where's it going to be?
The first one that really gets it out there and gets a lot of value is probably going to win. That looks like a miss.
Lil Rax tried to flank around the side, but Jupiter were already pushing forward. Xenofly self-destruct finds nothing, and now this is their chance. They all pile in on top of the grab. There is no Transcendence, no answer to it. Satchok down as well. Xeon Flux nearly at a Transcendence, but by the time he's got it, he might only be saving himself. He does get Xenofly topped off with it, but it's still a 3 versus 6 self-destruct laid up. Now it is a 2 versus 6 as you're trying to pummel back into this fight, but it is going the way of Jupiter at present. A lot of work needs to be done by Global Esports, Lil Rax especially coming out on the Doomfist. Savagod picking up a couple, and Global Esports still bleeding from the mouth.
This is it for Global Esports. Final opportunity. They got to get a lot done here.
Double from Claire.
It's just not interested.
And it's going to happen. We are going to get that time bank. That is creating something from nothing. Jupiter, I said on their defense, they look like they lost their mojo. And then I said it looks like they have regained it. They are still fighting from behind. But for the first time in the last 3 maps, I feel like they could still win this.
And for the first time in the series as well, Global Esports really need to check themselves, because we've kind of been condemning Jupiter a little bit for really awkward ults. They kind of hit them, but they don't get the follow-up. But guess what? That's still better than just completely whiffing your ults. Now, 2 really massive ult whiffs by Global Esports. One early on that A defense. Satrok throws it in, gets a big connection, then decides not to go in. Second one, we see at the end of C, Lil Rake's making this huge flank play around. 2 out of 2 flank plays, 2 out of 2 ultimates that get nothing done. Ult goes straight into a wall. Jupiter like, what was that? And they just cap.
That's honestly really rough on the side of Global Esports. When all that groundwork had been laid, and at every single point, it looked like Global Esports were about to full hold out Jupiter. The fact that at none of those points it actually came to fruition is a testament to how dangerous Jupiter can still be.
We see those defenses fall apart. The first parts of those defenses looking pretty decent. Have to look at A, pretty decent to start with. Towards the end, not so great. B as well. Took a lot of time off the clock, realistically forcing Jupiter's offense into the overtime every single part of the way, but Jupiter capping every single part of the way.
Now when we talk about time off the clock, it is only 1 minute for Jupiter. They have a very limited amount of time where they need to get a huge amount of distance if they want a fighting chance on their defense.
And I think realistically, Jupiter need to cap A here if they want a good shot at defending. Global Esports have far too much time to work with on their own offense if Jupiter do not get enough ground.
Last time around as well, Jupiter did fail this first fight here, so if that is a repeat, they don't really have time for a second, unfortunately.
And Jupiter need to be the ones to press the issue here. Samurai D, very large ult charge compared to everyone else. Anakin's around the side looking for a potential to get the stun in. And for Jupiter, this is about the only time they can afford to maybe find some space. But here comes that speed boost.
There they go around the side. They've actually isolated Xenofly to an extent, but it's hard to get that follow-up. He just moves back up to the high ground. Now Global Esports, their turn to counterattack. Big damage. But everyone's still alive for now. Anakin low, Ryu low, but Xenofly is going to be the one who's going to get DMEX'd with a stun to help that one come through. Nicely done from Jupiter. That is an advantage.
Jupiter need to press that advantage ASAP as well. They cannot allow Global Esports to get counter traits.
They're so low. Kenma Hiroro's down. They're having a hard time keeping these members alive. They got closer respawns. Now coming into a Transcendence. They commit it, and they commit it quick. Global Esports can start matching, though. They've got a lot of tools of their own. The Shatter doesn't get any kills, but it does slow Jupiter down. Kenma Hiroro now rejoining the fight as the grab comes out from Little Rax. They've got 2 for it. There's going to be a sound barrier from Claire, but it's not a lot. Ryu, self-destruct just barely, and he may be able to get back in the mech as well. Doesn't get any kills with it, and this is still a back foot position from Jupiter. They have not got counter trades. Global Esports still with ultimates as well. The closer respawn is not enough. The overtime wick burns so fast. And that is not much progress from Jupiter. I dare say potentially not enough.
Not nearly enough. In fact, Jupiter are probably going to need to do a very close hold against the spawn again. That didn't go too well for them originally. Can't imagine it's going to go better for them this time around. It has to go perfectly, in fact, if they want any hope of winning this map. And they need to win this map to force us to a map 5. Global Esports have more than any other map now being in a super winnable position.
And if they win this, they take all the marbles. 3 minutes and 12 seconds to close out the series by getting only 50 meters thereabouts. Very, very achievable, I dare say.
Global Esports had just so much going for them on that defense. To speak more about it, you can see Jupiter trying to speed in early. Got rebuffed super quickly as well. Global Esports still holding onto their speed boost. Goes in for the counter engage. Trades roughly go on the side of Jupiter just by 1. But Jupiter never really got any momentum with that. And now they need to get a lot of momentum on this defense. They need to be aggressive. They need to be decisive. And they need to be winning multiple fights in a row to defend 3 minutes and 12 seconds worth.
It's about as tough as it gets, really. This is realistically Jupiter staring down the barrel of a loss here. Stranger things have happened. If any team can pull a shock turnaround, it is this one.
And I'm looking at Kenma Hiroro as well as to be the one to maybe do a lot of the heavy weightlifting because he needs to stay alive. Last time he got picked super early and Lil Rax outcharged and got that first grab in. This time, if they can keep Ken alive, he can maybe get those early grabs in for Jupiter.
Here's that early fight position. It's a very tough one. This is very far from ideal. Ken Mahororo's already
low.
Ryu, they're just juggling aggro. Already Global Esports are threatening that cap.
And Jupiter just instantly back out. They do not find any early engagement. Lil Rex is now getting a lot of charge in there as well. Jupiter just seem to be missing. Global Esports have all the high ground.
And that's the thing that's the most terrifying realistically, is not just the ground that Jupiter seeded, but the verticality that they have inevitably seeded here.
You're looking at Samurai D. He's the only member on Jupiter that can really do something. Maybe Sabagod as well. Early Transcendence, they can get aggressive with that. They can win a fight.
Still very tenuous for Jupiter. Huge charge in the pocket of Little Rax, and that's going to start
They
them
should
out
use
for Jupiter.
Transcendence.
They've got to do it realistically. They can't just sit and wait for Global Esports to finish charging ultimates.
Jupiter got to get something done here. They have the early ultimate advantage. If they press that advantage, they can get a fight win. But they need to find the fight as well. Global Esports are being very tricky here. They're being very slippery, abusing the high ground. Now just waiting for their own. If Lil Rex in charge grab, it'll be a big deal.
And taking their time, because they have it to burn. In fact, a minute already burned. It's more than what Jupiter even had to work with. Now Jupiter need to use these ultimates to get kills. Lil Rex did get low, but didn't get finished off. So that Transcendence inevitably does nothing.
So it's going to be a big grab coming through, maybe.
Ooh, nice read from Ken Mahororo, reacted to by Xeon Flux's grab. Now Lil Rex has its own opportunity. Samurai D goes in, gets done. No shadow for you, sir. And the self-destruct to try and lay it in where the grab is going to pay off. Ryu gets nothing with his, and the dam has been busted. Global Esports are going to flood through, get that last little 0.58 of a meter to close out the series against Jupiter and get a much-needed win back after last week.
You can see there the second win coming for Jupiter on their original attack to actually push the time back. But then suddenly, look, the tide turns again and Global Esports are still in commanding position. That initial defense on time back, forcing us into that first choke onto A. Jupiter just needed so much more and they just did not have the time to work with.
That was a very impressive victory from Global Esports, you have to say. It felt like Jupiter came alive a bit more again in that last chunk of Rialto. But that's too little too late when you look at how Eichenwalder and Hanamura both went. Lijiang Tower was close. It was a good win from Jupiter, but it was really the best they looked throughout that entire series. Global Esports, on the other hand, they now put us in that situation where we have a three-way tie for second place at present, and that is how they can keep their hopes of a top 2 finish alive.
And also, realistically thinking about that as well, when you see the results going that way, you do also have some expectation that the top teams sharing that equal positioning right now are kind of the teams where skill levels seem to be reasonably equal across the board. Talent Esports, despite being in #1 right now, you may be still thrown into the mix. We'll see in later weeks if they can keep their #1 position. But among the top 4 teams, the composition is tight enough that they're all sort of winning games in a bit of a triangle or a bit of a circle.
And when you consider, because this is still very much relevant, the fact that Talon has yet to play most of these other teams who are sitting around that 2 wins, 1 loss area, Talon might not remain that top team for very long when you look at how many of these teams are hungry for that spot and are showing the capability to beat other teams in that same echelon. We have still got a long ways to go in terms of really seeing who's actually our best teams here.
And I think it's a very important win for Global Esports considering they lost to Nova MS already. They needed a bounce back win because otherwise they'd be slipping down the rankings on the standings as well, which is not where they want to be. Because they lose to Nova MS but they beat Jupiter, that's that triangle effect we're talking about. You lose to another top team, but then you beat another top team.
And that's the thing. Now it puts a lot of pressure on Jupiter's inevitable match against Nova MS as well. Still quite a few weeks away, but if they win that one, then hey, good thing for Jupiter. And again, it's a real triangle at that point. If they lose, then we really start to get that stratification. We've got here's Nova, here's Global Esports, here's Jupiter. And no points for guessing which of those isn't going to make top 2.
And Jupiter's now in the position that Global Esports started out in this week, which is in a little bit of a bounce back mode. They finally copped the loss on the leaderboard. Now they need to look at what they can get in the next couple of weeks. They got Cycling Coupling and Kicks coming up in the following weeks before they face teams like Nova MS and Talon eventually in week 7. So Jupiter have a little bit of space to work with to get their bearings again in Global Esports and can now kind of get the momentum behind them to really make some climbing.
Speaking of Cyclone Coupling and Kicks, those are actually the 2 teams that we are going to be seeing next. And, well, that is going to be coming up after a brief break, so stick around for the second half of the night.